change the way that they feel and they think about that day. Perception is a reality. And I can think back as a mom, I have twin boys that are 30. First 10 years of their life, somebody was always hitting their head, cutting their finger, getting hit with a baseball. Something always was happening. But one memory I have is when one of my boys was, come home. And he's running down the sidewalk towards me and he trips on something. And he goes flat down on his face into the sidewalk. I'm standing there watching it. He gets up, he shakes it off, and he's fine until he looks at me. When he looks at me, that is when he perceived the pain. It was the perception. It wasn't the fall on the sidewalk, So obviously I believe in CBT, but let's see what research shows. And it's like anything. You can pull up studies that support it, and you can pull up studies that don't support it so well. But overall, I have found that the neurocognitive perspective is very powerful because what it does, it takes an action, a problem-solving approach, because there's a lot of challenges associated with the pain. And so it puts them into more of an action problem-solving mode. But what really bothers you is what helps you perceive the pain. How much do you have to stay at home? How long can you stand on your feet? How far can you walk? All of it's going to make you very irritable and grumpy. That's a given. Then they looked at the patients that just had the CBT, and they found that there was a significant reduction in depression and anxiety. And personally, that's where I see that it adds the value. Because when you live the little bit that I know, you guys know more about that world, but when you live in that world and you wake up and you're in a survival mode, all you're thinking about, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to get through the day? And so when you're in that survival mode, do you think you're going to have some depression? Do you think you're going to have some anxiety? Of course you are, And that's why I see, one of the big differences. They also saw the improvement in the pain bothersomeness at 52 weeks. That's a year. That's sizable. And then they also saw some in just the standard physical and mental. It's a 12 questions on a questionnaire, one on depression and one on anxiety, and the other 10 on your physical state. So, based upon that, the panel decided that CBT did have some value. And they looked at the cost. CBT was a lot more expensive than mindfulness training. But even based upon that, they feel that it did have some reductions in depression. And the nice thing is with CBT, it's applicable. It's applicable to other areas of your life. Maybe you want to stop smoking. Maybe you want to lose some weight. What they learned in CBT, they could apply in other health areas in their life. Based upon this, the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review took it a step further. And of course, what they were doing is comparing costs. What are the costs of non-invasive treatments to the surgeries and the medication? So when they recognized, I think it was in 2015, the Global Bureau of Disease recognized how common low back pain and neck pain is. They identified that it was the second of the most common reasons patients see doctors. Do you guys experience that? A lot of that? Okay. And then when they looked at the dollars that were being spent there, it was the third highest. They spent more money on heart disease and diabetes, and then the chronic low back and neck pain. In 1966, we spent over $30 billion. In 2013, we spent over $87 billion. I Googled and Googled, because usually I can Google anything and I can come up with an answer. But I wanted to know what it would cost in 2018, and I really could not find a number that I could stand behind. I couldn't even find what I could term a guesstimate. But if I were a betting lady, I would be willing to bet that number is in the triple digits today. And the second thing that they found was that the focus on chronic pain, the perception of the pain does not match the level of damage. So you have a minor injury, but you're feeling that pain On a 1 to 10, you're feeling it anywhere from a 7 to a 10. And when you stop and think about that, what we said in the beginning, it's how you perceive the pain. You know, pain lives in the brain. It does not live in the body. Think about all the men and women that come back from war and they've lost a limb and their arm hurts. So they put the focus on 5 non-drug therapies, and 4 out of the 5 they recognize do add additional health benefit when combined with their usual care. Tai Chi is the one that they could not all agree on, that it added value. But this, I think, validated what a lot of people in the field had been thinking and speculating on. And it really, in my opinion, gives, I said, wow, I can build a program around that because there's something to stand on. So that means that we need to come up with a cognitive behavioral model of pain. And really, all that is cognitive restructuring, because pain is influenced by 3 things. 1, what's going on in the body, and when you are in pain, that autonomic nervous system is out of whack. Maybe you're breathing really fast, maybe your hands are getting all sweaty, maybe your vision's getting a little blurry. So you've got the physical stuff going on. Then you've got how they think about pain and their awareness of pain and their emotional reactions to the pain. So as a therapist, I'm going to step back and I'm going to want to look at the history of the pain. What was going on in their life when whatever happened. And then what are their coping skills? How do they cope with that pain? Do they have any coping skills? And then what are the other variables or the other factors that come into play? What's going on in their house? Does your spouse look at you and say, you know what, you better just suck it up, because the only thing you can do is take another pain pill, and you've said you're not going to do that anymore. So what is surrounding that pain experience for them? And once you have that information, then you can come up with a treatment rationale. And because you know what's going on in their head, you know what they don't understand, you know what they don't have education on, and you come up with a rationale that helps them understand the role that thinking and actions can affect the pain and can help control it. And you do some coping skills training. And I honestly believe it's not that people don't want to learn coping skills, I just don't think they know how. They just don't know how. And then how you apply these so that this becomes your maintenance program. We go get our oil changed every certain amount of miles. You need a maintenance program. How am I going to manage that pain? So to build that cognitive behavioral model of pain, we start with phase 1, and that's cognitive restructuring. And the first stage of that is information about their disease. When you are stuck, and you are stuck in that survival mode, and all you're thinking about is how you're going to get through the day, you're not taking in information. You're not trying to understand information about your disease. And the first thing I do is I talk about, your thoughts impact your actions, which is the way you behave, and the way you behave impacts your feelings, and that's your emotions, how you express those emotions. And then when you can get them to stop and think about that, they can actually believe, well, you know what? Maybe I do have a role. Maybe I can control this. Because I can't tell you how many people I've looked and said that to, and they look at me like, those deer in the headlight eyes. I don't think so. And it starts with really getting them to understand how the brain interprets pain signals. So back in the 60s, somebody came up with the gate control theory, and I don't really remember who it was, but it's based upon how the brain activates the signal. The job of the amygdala and the limbic system is to alert us to danger. So the pain starts wherever the injury site is, it travels through the nerve, it goes up through the spinal cord into the brain, and the brain registers that and perceives it as pain. So there are things that you can do to open that gate and let that pain flow. And there are things that you can do to close that gate and limit the amount of pain. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody think that back pain could be contagious? Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting in a VA hospital and you're surrounded with people that have pain, and maybe your pain's really, mine's only like at a 40 to 50%, and his is 70 to 80%, and of course I want to talk to him about his pain. I want to show him empathy. I want to be a resource for him. But while I'm doing that, is there a little bitty seed being planted in my subconscious mind? So that when I get in that stressed out state, when I get in that fight or flight mode, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, the mind's already got that neural pathway wide open to that pain. So, you know, just to play to your point, I think that we all know colds are contagious. I know I would scoot 2 seats down if you had a cold, but I think back pain can be contagious too, you know? So we need to think about what are realistic goals, and think about the pain, because what the soldiers are trying to do, you know, I'm a soldier, I've had worse than this, I'm gonna man up, I'm gonna push through it. That's one way to get through it. I'm not sure it's the healthiest or the most effective. I think more if you stop and you think, okay, you know that pain is gonna flare. For some people with migraines, a big change in the weather like today, that could have a significant impact on them. So what are you gonna do when that pain flares? Number one, are you capable of controlling it and dealing with it? And most people will say, it's out of my control. You know, if there's something I could do about it, I would do it. They don't believe that they have the power of control. So if you say, you know, no, when that pain flares up, what's gonna happen? They're either gonna get overwhelmed with it, and if you get overwhelmed, what does that bring on? Anxiety. Or they're gonna get sucked down into that deep dark hole. You know, they get down on themselves, and where does that lead you? Depression, you know. So if you don't choose to believe that you can manage that pain, it's managing you. You're not managing it. So step one is really getting them to the point to understand the different components that go into that, and then helping them to set realistic goals. Once you can get them to set realistic goals, then you can start to think about what is the one thing that everybody that has low back pain or neck pain wants? What do they want to do? They want to increase their activities. You know, maybe they want to go to work 5 days a week in the office. Maybe they want to be able to have that golf game. Maybe they want to be able to hit that baseball with their kid. They all want to increase their activities. So when people will come in and say, I'd love to play, you know, my son's playing softball and I wish I could play with him. My first response is, well, what's stopping you? You know, they look at you like, excuse me? What's standing in your way? What are the obstructive factors? And sometimes there really are things. There are real things, but sometimes it's all in their head. It is all in their head. And the more you help them, you challenge their beliefs and, you know, their thought patterns, the more you help them see, you know, that really isn't real. That's, you know, really, I guess I could do that. And sometimes it is real. You know, well, don't park your car on the curb. Go to the garage, and then it's closer to the back door. That reduces the amount of walking time you have. But just helping them process it and think through it in a logical way. And one of the ways I teach coping skills is relaxation techniques. And there is more science behind breathing than any other technique. And I try so hard to get people to work on their breathing. And they'll do it. When they're sitting in the office with me, they'll put their hand on their stomach, they'll see if they can feel movement around the belly button, but when they leave my office, they don't do it. And it's because breathing slow is really, really hard, you know? And for me, the beauty of the breath is it takes, as you said, it takes the focus off the pain. And you put the focus on learning how to breathe slowly. But I just have no luck at all. And I can give them everybody's optimal breath rate, if you're 4 or 40 or 80, is between 4 and 7 breaths. So to be breathing 4 to 7 breaths, you've got to push air down the diaphragm. And you can see their chest moving, And for whatever reason, I don't have much luck getting them to do that at home. Change your heart rate, change your breath rate, change your heart rate. You create heart rate variability. There's so much science for diabetes. If you are able to do that, you can create such health. One thing that I do have a lot of luck with getting them to do is progressive muscle relaxation. And I've left some of these sheets back on the trash can. But if you're interested, there's a lot more elaborate techniques to do this. But I have found when I'm trying to teach people something, it's got to be simple. I've got to be able to give them one page. And so what they'll do is they'll come in the office and I'll walk them through it at least 2 times. And then, but I find that they will take it home and they will do it. Because if you can just learn what it's like to create really strong tension and then release it, and then just create a little slight tension and release it, they can learn how to recognize that tension. And what does pain come with? 9 times out of 10, tension. So I have found that to be very helpful for people, and it's something that they will do at home. Because it's all about them, man, it's not about me. Another thing that I use is visual guided imagery. And I tell them, where can you visualize yourself? Close your eyes. Where can you visualize yourself in a place that's very peaceful? I used to be a beach girl, not anymore. I have a son that moved to Denver, and so I've traveled up there. Now I'm a mountains girl. So now I like the mountains because I feel very grounded. But maybe for you, it's in the kitchen, baking cookies. Wherever you can visualize where you are, stop. And I usually suggest sit down, put your hands on your knees, get grounded, whatever that means to you. And then what do you see? Close your eyes and visualize what do you see. And then, what do you smell? I'm in the mountains. I smell pine trees. What do you hear? I hear birds. And what do you taste? I taste that clean mountain air, And how do you feel? I feel great. I feel really great. So that's another coping strategy that you can use. And basically what you want to do is give them tools, because what I don't want, and I'm sure you don't want, is every time that pain ramps up, what do? Pick up the phone and call you. You've got to fix it. You've got to fix it. And if you could have fixed it, you probably would have already done that for them, I believe. So those relaxation techniques I find to be very helpful. Another thing that I do is, for a coping strategy, is teach them some problem-solving strategies. Because the number one thing that they look at me like the light bulb went off. Do you recognize the relationship between stress and pain? Pain and stress, they reinforce each other, and there's a cycle that they go through. So understand what that relationship between those two are. That's one way you can use to problem solve. A second is, I always say, there's 2 reactions that we have. We can cry, or we can keep our humor and laugh. And okay, you can't laugh every time, but if every 3rd time you can use your humor, there's a 33% improvement right there. And I know when I think about being in pain or being really, really upset, I can tell you right away who I do not want to talk to, because you know what they're going to do? They're going to make me feel worse. Okay, well, when you're in that situation, think about somebody that you do want to talk to, because just talking to them puts a smile on your face, makes you feel better. Have a support system identified. Now, don't call them and say, I'm level 8 pain, I'm getting ready to go level 9, What can you say? Because that stresses them out. You call them, you say, hey, how are you? you know, I was just thinking about you, and every time I think about you and I hear your voice, it makes me smile. And what are they going to do? Smile right back at you. You know, for problem solving, if you can keep the focus on the positive, and I'm not saying that's easy to do, but if you can, like I said, 1 out of 3 times, decide 1 out of 3 times I'm going to laugh at it. 33% improvement right there. And then, you know, pacing activities that you can use. When you think about your day and you let's go back to that morning where we woke up and we didn't really sleep very well, and we're not going to be able to get through the day. I'm helpless, I'm disabled, you know, it's just not going to work. Well, okay, think about how you can pace yourself. How long does it take you before you get to that level 6 pain? Well, on a day like today, I can probably be there within an hour and a half. Well, okay. Before you work through an hour and a half, stop. Pace yourself. Don't let it get to the level 6, because for a lot of people, whether it's a 6 or a 7, whatever, but once it gets to that level, what does it do? It escalates. It shoots up. So think about how you can use pacing as a way to manage that. And you know, it sounds like the easiest thing to do is make some lifestyle changes. Change your diet, change your caffeine, change your sleep, change the alcohol. That is the hardest thing for people to do. You know, one client comes to mind, and I have to fix fried chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy every Sunday. That is a family tradition. My family wants that, and they need that. Well, lady, that family wants it, but do they need it? No. I mean, you have to challenge their unhealthy beliefs, you know? And it's like, well, caffeine, really, you know, it's good for me. It makes my brain work a lot clearer. Well, okay, take that cup of caffeine in the morning. But in the afternoon, when you're starting to kind of nod off, stand up. You know, walk around a little bit, stretch. If you don't have the energy to walk, stretch. Stretching can do amazing things. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for staying. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.